Josh McGrath is here from the University of Maryland. He's going to talk about some of his latest research and conducting on-farm research. While we know that it's important that Mark and Joe and those people at the Y do a great job with research, it's also important that we do on-farm research. So Josh is working on my farm doing some research, and he's doing a great job. So Josh, thanks for being here today.
Seems like maybe a little strange topic to talk about doing research with y'all. But really my thought process here was, one, try and do something a little bit different. You know, most years I come and talk to you about NPK, sulfur, right? And how many times have you heard that? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, they don't change very much year to year. So, but we've got a lot of products that come out. I get calls. How many of you have heard about some sort of product in the past year that makes your nitrogen more available, or your phosphorus more available, your corn taller, or your corn smaller, or something, right? Snake oil was invented for farmers, right? So we can't, at the university, Bob and I work with a lot of these products, and Fertility can't keep up on all these products. So part of this is how you can do your own research, and part of this is how you can help us doing some research with us. Because there's a lot of value in us doing research out on the farm. So why on-farm research? Real quick, it's pretty simple to answer questions, right? You got a question, how do you figure out the answer? But it's important that you set that research up right. I have a lot of farmers come to me with results of things they've done, and what they've done, it's hard to evaluate the results, you know? It's not real research that we can validate, so that's kind of why I'm here, you know, to validate previous answers. There's another reason. Someone comes to you and says, you're going to get 20 more bushels from this. Well, are you really? You can validate their claim. You can validate it in your operation. Is it different on your field versus another field? And then, like I said, to supplement applied research at the universities. Dr. Cradaville and I do a lot of research on farm with real farmers, and we do small plot work on the university farms, but there's some value in doing our research out on a real farm with real equipment on full-size plots. You know, we're limited in space sometimes at the university farms. So a lot of times we're coming to you folks asking to help us out with some plot space. And it's nice, you know, with what I do with variable rate nitrogen. Paul mentioned that. We want to do that in really long, big plots to see how it varies across the field. So that works better with real farmers. So what do you need to do some research on your farm? Well, it's pretty simple. To do your own research, the most important thing is, I think, attention to detail and good record keeping. So these things don't really cost you anything other than time. But I tell folks, you've got to be all in from the beginning. The appreciation for that rigor, that research. You know, we're going to talk about some statistics and how to set up that research on your farm here in a little bit. And you've got to appreciate that you're doing that for a reason. And when you start getting busy in June, the first week of June, and it's time to side dress those plots you set out, you can't cut corners. So from the beginning, you got to be all in. And there's no shame if you're not into doing research on your farm. Okay, if you're happy to look at the research that your seed dealer or chemical dealer or the university provides you, and you're not interested in doing the research on your farm, that's fine. Some people's operation isn't set up so that they can do their own research. You might not really have the time or the equipment or the patience for it, and that's fine. So there's no shame in that, because doing it halfway isn't going to get us any answers that we can use. So you got to be all in from the beginning. So if you're not all in, you could check to see if the pork's ready. I don't know. Maybe the shrimps are ready over there, but or you can sit here and listen. Maybe you hear something you like.
Not ready yet.
Not ready yet. So you got to listen to this even if you're not all in. You know, because there will be a necessary interruption of your farming schedule, okay? If you do some research, it's going to take a little bit more time, and it's going to kind of interrupt your schedule. And some folks aren't comfortable with that, and that's fine. Now, these are the nice toys to have, and we all like toys, right? Right? Everybody likes toys, let's be honest. We like tractors. We like combines, we like sprayers, we like toys. And so these are the things that make it easy, especially today. It's a lot easier for farmers to do their own research nowadays, right? We got yield monitors on almost all our combines. How many of you have a combine with no yield monitor on it? Anybody? Few? There's a few out there, right? So, you know, but for the most part, they all got yield monitors. Most of them got GPS. Most of them have the ability to map the yield we're getting. This starts making things a lot simpler, but I'm going to caution you, if you want to do research, calibrate that yield monitor. You know, you want to calibrate it, and, you know, calibrate it periodically, not just the day you bought it and that's it and you're done with it. So we still need some of the old technology to calibrate that yield monitor and make sure that we're right. Rate controller with the ability to log applications is nice, because then if you do research and you're working with somebody like me or Bob, We don't even have to flag plots anymore, right? You can just give us the map. If you were able to map your application, say with fertilizer, give us the map of the yield. We don't even need flags out there anymore because we can just look at what you logged with your logger on your equipment. Variable rate controller, especially with prescription capability, that's a big deal, big advantage. We just got a new one on our sprayer. We got an old, what is it, Jan, 91 spray coupe, 220. I mean, it's an old piece of equipment. It's a $5,000 sprayer with $40,000 of equipment on it, of computer controllers. But we can set up a prescription ahead of time, and then we don't even have to change the rate manually in the cab as we're going through the field. So you could set up your whole study right now before it's time to side dress in June, right? So with these tools, it makes it a little bit easier to do some of this, and especially to work with others, to cooperate with others if you can log those rates and stuff. Here's the key strategies to keep in mind. First, keep it simple. All right? I think this is the biggest thing. If you're going to do research on your farm, keep it simple. Yes, no questions are the easiest to answer. Yes, is Arv still here? Arv left? Good, I can use this example. He gets on me. Yes, I'm going to use a fungicide, or no, I'm not going to use a fungicide. Arv tells me that's not a yes-no question, but we'll pretend it is since he's not in the room. You know, keep it very simple. And this is the kind of research you can do on your farm. Yes, no questions. But you want to make sure your comparisons are meaningful and answer the questions you're interested in. Because what happens, it's a slippery slope. I got a lot of my grad students are in the room today, and they'll tell you, I'm guilty of this, right? They look, they're nodding their head. Of getting you're going to go out and do the research. You say, hey, look, as long as we're going to put this time in and do this research, well, I don't want to just look at potash rates. I want to look at potash rates over top of seed population. Well, I'm already putting the time and money into it, so let's do potash, seed population, and let's do no-till and till, right? We start down this path, and we say, hey, as long as I'm putting the time in, let's get a little more complicated. Do I do that? Yeah, sometimes, right? Yeah. But you don't want to do that. Keep it simple, because then all of a sudden you've got these comparisons that aren't meaningful. And so keep it simple. If you're going to look at potash, look at potash. If you're going to look at nitrogen, look at nitrogen. Don't try and mix things that you're looking at. Now, I'm going to talk about statistics. Don't get scared. I'm not a big fan of statistics myself. But, you know, we should be comfortable with statistics because, you know, statistics were actually invented for agriculture, right? I mean, that's why most statistics departments are housed in ag colleges around the United States. Back in the Egyptian times, the pharaohs developed statistics. Now, this is a true story. Who was the first statistician according to tradition? Joseph. Right? For the pharaohs, he was figuring out how much wheat was produced and how much taxes everyone owed, right? Statistics were developed for agriculture. So farmers should be very comfortable with statistics. But I'll start off by saying contact your county extension office, right? Because what we're talking about here with statistics and doing research is setting up the plots, experimental design. I'm not even talking about analysis of the data. I'm talking about the design of the experiment to start off with. Contact Jenny, give her a call. She's not in the room, is she? I didn't want to put more work on you while you were in the room. But contact Jenny. If you've got a question you want to look at, and if she can't answer your question on how to set up the study, she'll call Bob, or she'll call me, or she'll call Ron, or Arv, or somebody. And that's what we're here for. Because if you're doing research, you're taking a load off our backs to start off with. So we'd be happy to come out and help you kind of design the experiment so that we can analyze it in a meaningful way. Second thing to consider, and this is the most important here. Replicate, replicate, replicate. I'm going to talk about blocking factors. I'm going to talk about randomization. I'm going to describe each of these things as we go through this talk. But here's kind of what we're going to talk about. Controls and checks. How many of you have heard of checks or controls when researchers, you ever been in one of these meetings, you've heard us talk about controls and checks. So I'm going to describe how that is, and there might be multiple checks, how to set that up. Now, there is a test. I'm going to have a test. I know it's late in the day. You've heard a lot of people talk. We've lost some people. I don't know if they died or fell asleep or maybe they're in the bathroom still from the break. There's a few people missing, and the ones that are here, I'm seeing kind of a little nodding going on. But there's going to be a test, so pay attention. And this one, you notice it's underlined in bold. I'm an easy teacher, right? So what's that? Confounding factors. Keep an eye on that. Keep it in the noodle there. We're going to get back to it. If nobody else knows it, I'm calling on Slim right there. So, yep. We're going to try and separate. So replication of blocks, that's trying to separate true response from natural variability. This is why we replicate, right? How many of you have a perfectly uniform field? How many? Perfectly uniform. Nah, not many of us. If you do, let me know. I'd like to do some research out there to figure out why it's perfectly uniform. But basically, we're replicating to take out that background noise. Now, this is one of the mistakes when people come to me with their own research and they say, hey, I did some research. I tried out this product, and I tried it in this field here, the whole field, and this field here, and I had 20 more bushels over here. Now, that kind of exploratory thing is important, because if you see something, then we can set up a real study. But in general, I can't do any statistics or anything like that, because how do I know that field over there wasn't just better than this field, right? I didn't have any controls. I didn't have any checks. I got to remove that background noise. Now, I'll use the term blocks and replicates interchangeably, all right? And that's not really appropriate, but I do. I do a lot of things that are considered inappropriate in polite company. But a block is a group of treatments, okay? And we replicate that block. So a block has all your treatments in it. I'm going to show you an example. And when I say block across factors, what I'm talking about is when I've got my group of treatments, let's say I got 4 different nitrogen rates. That's a block, that group of 4 different nitrogen rates. Now I'm going to replicate it 3 times. I want to replicate it in a way that's meaningful out in the field. I got to be cautious of soil type, yield potential, differences between fields, and year-to-year variability is an important factor to block on. So conduct your study in more than 1 year, because that way you can replicate it across years to see how weather changes the outcome of your study. So we look at soil maps, yield maps to get an idea of how we need to set up our blocks. I'm going to show you some examples here. And it's important to randomize treatments, because this kind of gets at the spatial variability where there's things across the field. Natural things usually are kind of random in the way they vary. But also you can have uniform variation in the field. Now, what would be uniform variation in the field? In other words, something that every 15 feet is the same, repeated in your fields. What happens to something like that? Every 15 feet you see a line in the field. What would cause that? Come on now. You got to speak up. I'm deaf. That's why I yell real loud. It's not so you can hear me. It's just because I can't hear myself. But what would be a uniform kind of variability that comes out across your fields? Equipment. That's the easy one, right? You got one row in the planter, put down a higher or lower population. Overlap with your sprayer. Manure spreader overlap. That's usually uniform variability, and that's why we randomize. If you've got 4 nitrogen rates in your study and you're going to replicate it 3 times, you can't have the nitrogen rates in the same order every time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You got to randomize them. 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3. See, I got 3 blocks here, 3 treatments randomized so that treatment 1 doesn't always fall on the good spot in the field. You know, that's that uniform. So that's really important. That's something people mix. A lot of people say, oh, I'm going to try out some seed varieties. So what do? Break the microphone. Split the planter, right? Split the planter. That data is useless to me. Why? Because I'm getting them 4 rows, every 4 rows, same. I didn't randomize. I didn't mix it up. I can't use that data if it's not randomized. I know it's easier, but remember, I said you got to be all in. You got to be all in. Blocking factors. You guys got deer in Queen Anne's County? No, none. No deer in Queen Anne. You guys don't have any left on the farm? Did you guys kill them all? Ralph's got them all, didn't he? We got deer damage, and we got to be aware of it when we're doing studies. When you set up your blocks, it doesn't matter if your block's in a bad part of the field or a good part of the field, but you want the whole block, the whole group of treatments in that area or out of that area. So if you got deer damage along the hedgerow, it's usually worse than in the middle of the field, right? So if you're forced to put that study up against that hedgerow where you know that corn gets licked up pretty good, then make sure that your whole block is in that bad zone if you can. I know it's not a perfect world. Or have your whole block out of it. But we wouldn't want that damage to cut across a block or a group of plots. We want all 3 treatments in this study to either get hit by the deer damage or not. Another big one, soil type is probably the biggest thing to block for. Look at a soil map. See how I set this up so that my 3 treatments are all in soil type 1. Soil type 2, I've got a little split in that first plot, but it's all right. And then this one, I kind of lost half my plots of soil type. It's not even in there. It's not a perfect world is my point here. I'd be happy with this. Even though I didn't perfectly get my plots inside one soil type, I'd be happy with this. I randomized my treatments to adjust for that. I've got 3 replicates. That's good. Maybe 4 replicates would have been better. So here's an example of replication. I'm a fertility guy, right? I scored low on the IQ test, so I had to go into fertility at college, right? So that's why I do fertility. I was telling some folks, is anyone here from MDAs? Howard here yet? Oh, I better not say this then. I said fertility's easy, just over-fertilize and you're good, right? I shouldn't say that, right? I get myself in trouble. Get myself in trouble. Good thing. So anyway, nitrogen rates, yield, bushels per acre, okay? Traditional nitrogen study. I made this up, but for example, field number 1. Now, all your blocks don't have to be in the same field. Those other examples I showed you, they were. But here I'm using fields as a blocking factor. I put one block or group of plots in each field to see how my study works in different fields. I got a bunch of nitrogen rates out there from 0 to 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre. Typical response curve that when I get up on the high point of the curve, yield flattens out. If I add 300 pounds of nitrogen to this field, I don't get any more yield, but I'm still at basically max yield. Okay, typical response curve. Field number 2 has a lower yield potential apparently. Maybe it was a little drier on field number 2 or for whatever reason, but that's why we replicate. Field number 3, now Bob mentioned this in his talk. He knew I was going to talk about it. That's why we've seen each other's talks 20 times now. But we got 185 bushels of corn with 0 pounds of nitrogen at side dress time. Now, how many of you can get 185 bushels with no nitrogen? How many of you ever tested to see if you can get 185 bushels with no nitrogen? Well, so how do you know? You don't know if you haven't tried it. Right? I'm not recommending you go out and try it. Don't go out and now you get folks, I didn't put any nitrogen out, I got 30 bushels of corn. So what could happen? Well, it could have been that soil organic matter or historic manure applications 15 or 20 years ago. The weather was right. What's another reason when we don't see responsiveness to nutrients? Drought, dry. I can get 30 bushels with no nitrogen if it doesn't rain, right? So sometimes you have a non-responsive block or field in nutrient studies, and so what would I do? I'd take that rep out. So people always say, how many reps do I need to have? It depends. It depends. The more the better. At least 3, especially if I'm involved. Because if I'm involved, you're going to lose one whole block of plots, right? Because I got bad luck. You're going to put a block of plots in an area, the blackbirds are going to descend from heaven and eat all the corn. And you're going to lose one block of plots if I'm involved in your study. So at least 3, so you got 2 reps left to go on. Maybe 4. In the field studies, I like to say 4 or 5 reps is a good place to be because there's a lot of variability in the field that you want to be able to adjust for. Control treatments. Perhaps this is your standard practice. Again, back to my yes-no question. Fungicide. Do I apply it or don't I? So your standard practice, if you don't normally apply fungicide, that can be your control, and then your treatment is fungicide. Very simple study. There's 2 treatments. Should I apply? I sprayed my entire field and had the best corn ever. I hear this a lot with some fertility products that are out there on the market. And I say, did you leave a spot out? How do you know it wasn't just a good year, right? A lot of times, that was the best looking corn I ever had. I used pixie dust. It was the best corn I ever had. But they didn't have a strip with no pixie dust. So we can't tell what Tinkerbell's doing for us and what she's not doing for us. So we don't have that control treatment in there. It doesn't work for rate questions because there can be multiple answers and we got to have multiple checks. Especially with fertilizer, we got to have a high check and a low check, right? We got to make sure we're out on the sufficient end of the curve. Remember I said I can just over-fertilize and I'm good? It's because once I maximize that yield with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, I'm out on the sufficient end of the curve and I don't know if I'm over-fertilizing. So I've got to have the negative check also in a fertility question. So sometimes you need more than one check. Here's my nitrogen example again. Your normal rate's 100 pounds. You thinking to yourself, I might need 125 pounds at side dress. I might be able to do a little bit better and push my yield. I do my 3 reps, get the average. 3 reps, get the average. No yield response, 100 pounds side dress. I was doing the right thing all along. But what's wrong here? I don't really have a check. I don't have a control. I need those rates to be able to tell. With more N, we can see whether the optimum rate is higher or lower than that 100 pounds. I need a low control, a negative control, and a positive control when I'm doing a rate study. So you can't just have 2 treatments in a fertility rate study. You need more space to do fertilizer studies. Here's a really good example. Now, this is a true story. True story. A county agent sent me this paper. I love to hear from you guys. I was out at a meeting yesterday, and I learned of 3 fertility products to stabilize nitrogen or improve fertility that I never heard of before. This is why I'm asking for you guys' help. I can't stay up. I try and stay up on this, but I can't stay up on it. The snake oil industry is blossoming. You know, price of corn's high, price of nitrogen's high. There's a lot of products out there. Some work, some are very good, some do not work. So, county agent about a month or two ago sent me an email and said, hey, have you seen this study? And I won't name the name of the university. Now, this is hard to believe. You folks are used to Jenny and Bob, and I won't mention myself, but at least the University of Maryland Extension, a high level of quality from your extension, right? What are you laughing at, Nicole? You're used to a high level of quality from the University of Maryland. But there are some universities out there that have done some questionable research. I know it's hard to believe, but other states have some problems. And this was another state. They published this in an extension document. They said, what do you think about this study? And I'm not going to tell you what university it was. I don't want to be negative. And I've also changed the names of the products. These were real products, but I took the names of the products out. Because the study wasn't a good study, I didn't want to run down products that were evaluated in a poor way. So, they said that we got these products to stop ammonia volatilization. Typically, we use granular urea broadcast on the surface as our nitrogen source. Now, I'm going to stop right there and say that's the worst possible thing you can do from a nitrogen management standpoint, because if it's warm and humid, you're going to lose 50 to 60% of that nitrogen off the surface in the first 48 hours, guaranteed. So half the nitrogen you bought, unless that urea is half as cheap, 50% the cost of UAN, you lost your money by buying it. So we'll start there. But this is what these folks do, and a lot of guys do this, all up front, all granular urea. And they heard about two products that are going to stop this volatilization so we can do that. Do these products work? So we're going to use our standard practice, granular urea, as a check, and another product as a positive check to stop volatilization, ammonium sulfate. We know ammonium sulfate doesn't volatilize. So that's my other check. Urea is my negative check, ammonium sulfate is my non-volatile check, and I got these two products I want to evaluate. No V, I'm real creative with my imaginary names. No V for no volatilization was added to urea. Ammonia stop was added to urea. Got my ammonium sulfate and my urea. So I got 4 treatments, applied 150 pounds of nitrogen at planting, measured the yield, replicated 3 times in one field. This was their study. It looks pretty good on the surface until you start looking at the data they came up with. They did 3 reps. The dark green bar is the average. I'm just going to pull out the averages for you. No V, ammonia stop, and urea all got about 150 bushels, and they said the ammonium sulfate gave us a 13 bushel yield response that was significant, so none of these products stopped volatilization. Got 13 bushels out of the nitrogen conservation of using ammonium sulfate. Now, remember I said there's going to be a test? And I showed you a term that was in bold and underlined. What was that term? Here's the test. Confounding factor. You guys are good. You guys are good. Most counties, they just sit there and go, is it lunchtime yet? Lunch. Hungry. Pork today. Cold cut. So anyways, confounding factors. What is it? They were trying to study nitrogen, but what did they give themselves with the ammonium sulfate? Sulfur. They had something in there that wasn't part of their study. I guarantee you that 13 bushels was a sulfur response. We're seeing tremendous sulfur response. I'm surprised they didn't get 60 bushels out of it. So it looked like ammonium sulfate was the only one that works, but they had this confounding factor. That's the first big problem. But then the other thing is, if we're looking for N conservation, we need these rates in the study. Bob's been doing a lot of field work with these products. And what's he always do? A bunch of rates so he can see the nitrogen response and the product response. We got to be able to pull those two things apart. Now this is fake data. That was real. That was real with the names changed to protect the innocent. But this is fake, kind of showing you how I do it. I'd go out and put sulfur over the whole plot area so I know I don't have a sulfur response. I got my ammonia sulfate in there. I got my ammonia stop, my no-V. So here's the no-V yield response, made up data. Okay, got 155 bushels at about 100 pounds of nitrogen with the no-V. Here's my ammonia stop. Look, there's a big difference here. I still can get the max yield. See, this is the trick with these nitrogen products. When people show you data from using a product that keeps ammonia from volatilization, I just put 200 pounds of nitrogen out with and without, and I can show you the same yield, right? But I got to have lower rates. I got to have yield loss in a nitrogen study. Got to have it. Now, guys, when I work with you on your farms, you say, man, I don't want you to put these zero-N plots out. Funny thing is, right, you lose some yield, you lose some money in our yield loss plots, but no one ever complains about spending extra money on my 200 pound of nitrogen per acre plot, but you're losing money there too, but you kind of don't notice that, right? But Ammonium sulfate looks just like No-V, falls right on the same line. At 100 pounds, I get my 155 bushels. And urea falls right here on the ammonia stop. And we know urea is volatilizing, right? So what I've got is a product response of 50 pounds of nitrogen. By having that lower rate, I can tease out the fact that I had a 50-pound product response. If it stops ammonia loss, I should be able to use less product, right? And then I have my yield response to nitrogen was about 100 bushels. Some other considerations. Bring in your friends. Now, I know farmers can be a contrary group of people. There was nobody more contrary than the McGraths in the entire universe, all right? And you may not have any friends. Or you may not want the friends you have. That's usually the more common situation. Or maybe you just don't want more friends, right? This happens. Farmers don't want other guys knowing what they're doing on their operation. Am I right? I'm right, right? Yeah, we don't like to admit it, but it's true. But the more locations we have in a study, the better. Shows how robust the product or the treatment is. Is it reproducible in different situations with different climate, right? It's like picking varieties. When you look at the variety data, you don't want to pick the highest yielding variety. You want to pick the variety that yields the highest at the most locations, right? Even though Howard County is not like Queen Anne's County, maybe Howard County last year is like Queen Anne's County is going to be this year. You know what I mean? That sort of thing with the climate difference. So, you know, bring in some friends, and this is where extension can help. Maybe you're one of these folks that doesn't want any more friends, all right? But you call Jenny up and you say, hey, I heard about this product. And maybe I've had 10 people call me about the product, and I can set up the study with all 10 of those people, and you don't ever have to meet them, be friendly with them, or anything. I'll get all the data from all 10, average it, and send it back out. So this is where extension can plug into you folks doing your own research. Plot size. The larger the plot, the better. I always get this question. Some things you can do on a pretty small plot. I'll use my fungicide example again. I think you can do that on small plots. I don't know. Variable rate study, you need a big plot because I need variation in it. Straight nitrogen study, I can do it on a smaller plot. But it's practical. Same thing with reps. How much room do you have? How much time do you have? And how much money are you willing to lose or make? All right? So that's kind of what determines plot size. Bob Nielsen from Purdue University said this fall at crop school down in Ocean City. I really liked it. Sometimes an experiment simply becomes an experience for the farmer with little real impact. So if you don't set it up right from the beginning, or you cut corners as you're going through doing the study, it's just an experience. It's not an experiment. You know, you got to have that experiment set up like an experiment. But we can answer some important questions. These are the two main things: planning and attention to detail. Technologies do make it easier, and extension's here to help. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help, right? So, one last thing. This is my fault. Actually, I'm going to blame Jenny because she hasn't lit a fire under my butt to get it done. We haven't picked the date yet, but we're going to have our Precision Ag Equipment Day again this summer. Keep your ears open. Jenny will be letting you guys know. How many of you made it last year? Quite a few people. It was a good time, right? I thought the speakers were really good. These equipment, ag engineers, real equipment guys coming in other parts of the country where they still have ag engineering. I thought it was a lot of fun, so we're going to do it again probably late July, early August. Jenny's got to light a fire in my butt, get me to pick a date. Do I have time for a question?
Yeah, you got time.
All right.
I know you want to recognize your group, too.
Oh, yeah. Hey, everybody who works with me, you want to stand up? Or if you're the husband, the newlywed husband of someone that works for me, stand up. There you go. All right, so these are some of my grad students and stuff. Where's Gene at? Gene didn't even stand. Gene, you guys know Gene. Gene's the wheel and the cog. We got Mike here from Delaware, but if you bring me on your farm to do research, these are the knuckleheads you're going to see. Because as you know, I don't really work. So these are the ones you're going to see. But anyways.
Any questions?
Any questions at all? Yes, sir.
Talking about using ammonium sulfate. What effects is that having on the pH of the soil?
Okay, ammonium sulfate is like any other ammonical fertilizer. A lot of people think it's the sulfur. Sulfur will not change your soil pH. Okay? Sulfur, if you apply elemental sulfur, will lower your pH. Elemental sulfur will bring your pH down. But ammonium sulfate is the same as any ammonical fertilizer. It will drive your pH down. Yeah, absolutely right. So that can have a big, as a matter of fact, in some of our sulfur studies, we see this pH influence in the band when we use ammonium sulfate. But it's still a great nitrogen source as long as you're managing your pH. Other questions? Anything at all about any of these products out there? You got any ideas of things you'd like to look at your farm, how you'd like to look at it, anything like that? Yes, sir?
have you partnered with Paul and taken a look at how much nutrients are absorbed by the switchgrass, taking test soil tests before and after? And
we haven't, but Paul, I think you guys are looking at nutrient accumulation. Ken Staver at the Y. So the question is switchgrass, how much nutrients is being taken up? What's the benefit? I think Ken Staver, just kind of his bailiwick, looking at accumulation in these things. It's a big plant. I imagine it's taking up a lot. Deep roots, right? So, but other questions? That's it. All right. Yeah, everybody wants to move on to lunch.
Okay. We have a couple more sponsors. If you want to get him mic'd up. Harry Daisy is here from Daisy Insurance. Harry, come on up. Thank you for being a sponsor today.
Good afternoon. Jenny asked me to come up with a few things that are new for this year. In the past, billing, you've got your bill due October the 1st, interest attached November the 1st. That's a big change this year. Billing is August the 15th, and interest will attach on October the 1st. So you may want to bear that in mind as you're doing your harvesting and your financing. Also, there are some new requirements for breaking ground and for putting CRP back in production if you're doing it this year. If you have crop insurance, you want to talk with your crop insurance agent and ask them how they're going to handle it. Those changes need to be taken care of by sales closing date of March 15th. So if you're bringing any that type of ground in there, I'd strongly urge you to talk with your crop insurance agent and ask them how their company is going to handle that and get that ground insured for you. Any questions? Thank you.
A couple other, Maryland NRCS was a sponsor today, and Tanzel Hudson is here. He's our assistant state conservationist. Thank you for coming, and thank you for all the good work that the ladies in the office do, Sharon, and they are very busy, and they do an excellent job helping us. And then Kim Kemple from FSA. Kim, you want to say a couple words? And then we'll get started.
Just some reminders for all of you if things you can be working on right now. If you have any farm changes, you've dropped farms, picking up new farms, come see us as soon as you can so we can get those updates done. And if you're picking up a new farm, don't forget we need something in writing from the landowner documenting that you have picked up that farm before we can make that change. Right now, we're still working on shore for crop year 2010, so if we haven't run those numbers for you, come see us. You have to let us know if you had a loss. I think we've done like 50. We've only had about 3 people who've qualified for a payment, so we're not seeing a whole lot of people who are getting a payment, but you never know, so don't miss out on that. And that ends June the 1st. We've just about got all your DCP contracts printed, so we'd like for you, before you get too busy, to come in and get those contracts signed up for 2012. The deadline for that is June the 1st. So come see us as soon as you can so we can get that done. Small grain acreage reporting deadline is June 15th. If you haven't done that, you need to come see us and get that done. And we are taking acreage reports for cover crop, which is new this year. So we'll need your cover crop acres, and remember to bring your planting dates with you. We are having a general CRP sign up starting Monday. That's going to go for about a month. So if you have some land that for some reason didn't qualify for continuous CRP or CREP, this is an opportunity to maybe get that land in CRP. So come see us about that if you're interested in learning more about that. And one other thing, with the way the budget's going and everything, you know, we're with less money to send you postcards and reminders, and we're trying to collect as many emails as we can, because this is going to be our new way of communicating with you and getting so you don't miss deadlines. So make sure when you come in to see us that we have that on file so we can continue to communicate with you. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim. Thank you for you and all your office. You ladies do a good job. There's two important people here that I need to point out. One is Jamie Kimball's. Jamie came several months ago to work in our office, and he is writing nutrient management plans, and he is doing an excellent job. And Joe Dawkins is here. Wave to everyone. Joe is in Kent County, so if you have not gotten your nutrient management plan, update it. Either one of these gentlemen will take care of you. They're doing an excellent job. They're going to be handing out some clickers. We're going to do some evaluations after Cerruti gets done.